بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نكمل محاضرة General Anatomy حول موضوع يتعلق بالنوز والParanasal sinuses. The paranasal sinuses have 5 pairs of bony cavities that fill with air. They are increased in size with age progresses. حقيقة وجود pairs of cavity within the cranial bone and only one facial bone that have cavities that called paranasal sinuses. The paranasal sinuses, they are air-filled space in certain bones of the skull and are in direct communication with nasal cavity through their ostia. There are 4 on each side, divided as 2 groups: anterior group that form maxillary sinus, frontal sinus, and anterior ethmoidal; posterior group that form medial ethmoidal, posterior ethmoidal, and sphenoidal. What's the function of paranasal sinuses? The first function, the presence of these sinuses lighting the skull. حقيقة skull is a large bone that is not held by the cervical vertebrae. Mainly, the first cervical vertebrae is atlas, and the second cervical vertebrae is axis. So, by presence is air sinuses, air cavity lighting the skull. Second, they added resonance to speech. Third, they play a vital role in conducting the inspired air. حقيقة, when enter the air to the lung, you must be normal temperature, body temperature, and humidity that have not injured to the lung. So, by this paranasal sinus that have accommodate the temperature of the air and its humidity. They are mainly 4 and added 1. The first one, frontal air sinuses; second one, sphenoidal air sinuses; and third one, ethmoidal air sinuses; and the fourth one, maxillary air sinuses. And the temporal air sinuses is a sinuses within the temporal bone, not related to the nasal cavity, but it is have effect on the resonance of voice and have its communication with the sticking tube within the pharynx. The first group is frontal air sinuses, are 2 in number, situated in frontal bone above the medial end of the eyebrow, within upper border of the eye of the orbit, the superior orbital edge, each of which open in the medial meatus by ethmoidal pedibellum. The frontal sinuses, situated in between inner and outer table of frontal bone, is shaped pyramidal in shape, with apex upward and base is formed by the floor of the sinuses. Capacity between 5 to 10 ml. Its boundaries: anterior wall, outer table of frontal bone; posterior wall, inner table of frontal bone separate the sinus from the cranial cavity. The floor formed by thin bone separating the sinus from the orbit. The medial wall forms the septum between 2 frontal sinuses. Second sinus is sphenoidal air sinuses, are 2 in number, lie within the body of the sphenoid bone, and open into sphenoethmoidal recesses, the spaces between the roof of the nasal cavity and the upper surface of the superior meatus. The sphenoid sinuses, there are 2 sphenoidal sinuses, and the sphenoid bone is within the body of the sphenoid bone, divided unequally by thin bony septum. Its relation laterally with cavernous sinuses that contain 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th cranial nerve and internal carotid artery and optic nerve. Superiorly, that is related with the pituitary gland, optic chiasm, orbitary pulp, and frontal lobe. Inferiorly, within nasopharynx and the median nerve. Posteriorly, within brainstem and basilar artery. The third sinuses is the ethmoidal air sinuses, divided to 3 groups, situated with the beneath the body of the ethmoidal sinuses. The part of divided to 3 situated group. First one, call it anterior one, open into infundibulum. The second one is middle, open in the middle meatus, and the third one, posterior, open into superior meatus. The ethmoidal sinuses, it is a group of sinuses lie within thin wall air cavity in the lateral mass of ethmoidal bone, clinically divided to anterior and middle and posterior group. The ethmoidal beneath as followed relation. The roof anterior cranial fossa lateral to cribriform plate. Lateral wall within orbital cavity optic nerve nasolateral duct, separated by thin bone called lamina paprica. Inferiorly with maxillary sinus. Posteriorly with sphenoidal sinus. Medially superior and middle turbinate, superior and middle concha. The last one is maxillary sinus. It's located within the body of maxilla. Its shape is pyramidal in shape, with base forming part of lateral wall of the nose, and the apex in the zygomatic process of maxilla. The side orbital anterior and frontal surface of maxilla. Its small opening is called ostium, which lie high up and unfavorably situated for drainage open in the middle meatus. The maxillary sinus and other name for it is Antrum of Highmore. It is the largest of the paranasal sinuses, pyramid in shape with base toward the lateral wall of the nose and apex directed into zygomatic process. Its capacity between 10 to 20 mil. Its boundary medial wall lie between the sinus and nasal cavity. Posterior wall related to pterygopalatine and infrafrontal fossa. Anterior wall related to the soft tissue of the cheek. The roof formed by floor of the orbit. Floor formed by appendicular process and the palatine bone. Thank you for your listening.